A man who truly loves you does not always become louder. He becomes clearer. He becomes calmer. He starts saying things that do not pull you into confusion, but bring you back to peace. And that is what most people miss. Deep love is not always fireworks. Sometimes it is a steady voice in a quiet moment saying exactly what your heart needed to hear. If you have ever wondered how a man sounds when his love becomes real, stay with me, because these next moments matter. The signs are not just in big promises or dramatic lines. They are hidden in simple words, spoken slowly, with care, with weight, with truth. When a man stops trying to win and starts trying to connect, his language changes, his tone changes, even his silence changes. He no longer speaks just to get a reaction. He speaks to give safety. He speaks to make room for you. He speaks like someone who is no longer afraid of love. And once you hear this shift, you cannot unhear it. Because when a man deeply loves you, he begins to say 7 kinds of things that reveal what is happening inside him. Not on the surface. Deep inside, in his heart, in his body, in the way he now chooses you without needing applause for it. And the deeper we go, the more powerful this becomes. Because the last few signs are often the ones people feel the most, even when they cannot explain why. The first thing he starts saying is simple, but it carries so much weight. He says, I hear you. Not just with his mouth, with his whole presence. There is a big difference between hearing words and truly receiving someone. A man who is still guarded will rush, defend, interrupt, explain. But a man who deeply loves you starts listening in a different way. He does not treat your feelings like noise he needs to manage. He treats them like something important, something real. He lets you finish. He pauses before he answers. He pays attention to your tone, not just your sentences. And when he says, I hear you, it does not feel like a trick to end the conversation. It feels like a door opening. For many women, this is one of the first signs that love is becoming safe. Because being heard is not a small thing. It is healing. It tells your body that you do not have to fight for space anymore. It tells your heart that you do not have to scream to be known. And when a man says this with sincerity, he is also revealing something about himself. He is no longer trapped in the need to be right every second. He is no longer listening only to prepare his reply. He is listening to understand what it feels like to be you in that moment. That kind of listening is not performance. It is maturity. It is love with its shoes off, quiet, grounded, real. And if you have ever felt unseen before, then you know just how deeply these 3 words can reach. The second thing he begins to say is, what do you need right now? That question changes everything. Because a man who loves from ego asks, how do I make this stop? But a man who loves from depth asks, how can I meet you here? He stops treating emotion like a problem to solve quickly. He stops acting like your tears, your stress, or your overwhelm are interruptions to his comfort. Instead, he becomes curious, not controlling, present, not panicked. He wants to know whether you need silence, a hug, honesty, time, reassurance, or simply someone who will stay. This is where love starts to feel different in the body. You can sense when someone is trying to manage your emotions, and you can also sense when someone is making space for them. One creates pressure, the other creates peace. When he asks what you need, he is telling you that your inner world matters. He is saying your feelings are not too much for me. He is saying, I do not need you to be easy in order to love you. And that is powerful because many people were taught to hide their pain just to keep love. So when a man asks this question gently, without frustration in his voice, without checking out, without secretly wishing the moment would pass, something softens. You begin to trust him, not because he has perfect answers, but because he is no longer making the moment all about himself. And stay with this. because the next shift goes even deeper. It is where love stops sounding polite and starts sounding deeply alive. The third thing he starts saying is, I want to understand. Sometimes he will even say, I may not see it the same way, but I want to understand how it feels for you. This is where love moves beyond attraction and enters emotional depth. Because understanding takes work, it takes humility, it takes the courage to step out of your own viewpoint and enter another person's world without trying to control what you find there. A man who deeply loves you becomes less interested in winning the conversation and more interested in protecting the connection. That does not mean he suddenly agrees with everything. It means he values truth more than pride. He values closeness more than his image. He values you more than the little throne his ego sits on. And that shift can be felt instantly. His tone becomes softer. His replies become slower. He no longer throws sharp words just to defend himself. He starts asking better questions. He starts saying, tell me more, help me see what I missed. I didn't realize it landed that way. These are not weak phrases. They are signs of inner strength, because it takes far more strength to stay open than it does to shut down. It takes far more courage to be teachable than to be impressive. And when a woman hears this kind of language, she does not feel handled. She feels met. That is a huge difference. Being handled makes you small. Being met lets you breathe. And real love always gives your soul more room to breathe, not less. This is also where many relationships either deepen or slowly die. Because without understanding, people only stand near each other. They do not truly touch. The fourth thing he says, and maybe one of the most healing, is I'm here. Not just in easy moments, in hard ones too. In the quiet after an argument, in the stress of real life, in the sadness he cannot fix, in the uncertainty neither of you can solve in one night. A man who deeply loves you does not always show up with perfect words, but he stops disappearing. That matters more than people realize, because love is not tested most in romance. It is tested in discomfort. It is tested in delay, in pressure, in misunderstanding, in silence. Many people can be sweet when everything feels light. But when a man says, I'm here, and proves it with his nervous system, with his patience, with his consistency, you begin to feel something rare. Safety, real safety. Not the kind created by control, but the kind created by steady presence. He no longer looks for exits every time feelings get intense. He no longer treats closeness like a trap. He stays, and because he stays, his words begin to carry a different energy. They do not rush you. They do not corner you. They do not demand that you hurry up and become easier to love. They simply say, I am not running from this moment. I am with you in it. That kind of presence is medicine. In a world full of half attention, it feels almost sacred. And if you have ever spoken while someone looked at their phone, nodded without listening, or answered before truly hearing you, then you already know how precious full presence is. A loving man starts giving that presence freely, not as a performance, as a way of being. And from that presence comes the fifth thing he says. He says, take your time. Those 4 words sound small, but they can heal years of pressure. Because people carry so much hidden fear in love. Fear of being too emotional. Fear of speaking badly. Fear of needing too much. Fear of not getting it right. But when a man deeply loves you, he stops turning every conversation into a race. He stops demanding instant clarity from a heart that may still be sorting through pain. He understands that real feelings do not always arrive in neat sentences. Sometimes they come in pauses, in tears, in half-finished thoughts, in the long silence before the truth finally rises. So he does not rush to fill every quiet space. He does not punish you for taking a moment to find your words. He does not act annoyed when your heart needs a slower pace than his mind. He says, take your time, and he means it. In that moment, his love feels less like pressure and more like shelter. He lets the truth unfold. He lets the moment breathe. He lets your body catch up with your voice. This is also a sign that something inside him has changed. He is no longer obsessed with control. He is no longer trying to force the outcome. He trusts that what is real does not need to be dragged into the light. It can arrive on its own. And that trust changes the whole emotional atmosphere. Arguments soften. Defensiveness drops. Connection grows. Watch closely here, because this is one of the signs most people miss. A man who can stay calm in the slow moments is often the same man who can be trusted in the deep ones. The sixth thing he starts saying is something many men avoid for years. He says, "I was wrong and I want to do better." That sentence is powerful because it reveals a man who is no longer protecting an image at all costs. He is no longer trying to look flawless. He is trying to be true. And truth is the ground where love grows. When a man deeply loves you, he stops treating mistakes like attacks on his identity. He does not collapse into shame, and he does not rise into arrogance. He owns what is his, cleanly, honestly, without a long speech designed to shift the blame back onto you. He says, "I was wrong." He says, "You did not deserve that." He says, "I see how that hurt you." And then the most important part, he says, "I want to do better." Not someday, not in theory, in practice. Because love without repair becomes fragile. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone misses something. Everyone reacts from old wounds sometimes. But deep love is revealed in what happens next. Does he defend the wound he caused, or does he become accountable for it? Does he try to win the argument, or does he protect the bond? The man who can own his impact becomes someone you can trust with your tenderness. And that is rare, very rare. This is where many women feel their whole body relax, because apology is not just about words, it is about emotional leadership. It is about showing that he is strong enough to face himself. And the man who can face himself honestly is far less likely to make you carry all the emotional weight alone. The seventh thing he begins to say is, "Tell me more about what you're feeling." This is where his love stops skimming the surface and starts entering your real world. Because many people ask questions only to keep a conversation moving. But a man who deeply loves you asks because he wants to know what lives beneath the words. He wants to understand the fear under the anger, the sadness under the silence, the hope under the hesitation. He becomes interested in your inner life, not just your schedule, not just your beauty, not just the polished version of you that the world gets to see. He wants to know the parts of you that are harder to explain, the parts still healing, the parts that go quiet when they are not sure they are safe. And when he says, "Tell me more," he is telling you something else too. He's saying, "I am not overwhelmed by your depth. I welcome it. I want to know what this was like for you. I want to hear the whole thing. I want to stay long enough for the truth to arrive." That kind of curiosity is sacred in love. Because where there is real curiosity, there is less judgment, less assumption, less emotional laziness. He stops acting like he already knows everything about you. He begins discovering you again and again. That keeps love alive. It keeps the connection from becoming dry, repetitive, mechanical. A woman feels this immediately. She feels the difference between being observed and being explored with care. One feels cold, the other feels deeply human. And this next layer may be the one that changes everything. Because once a man starts opening this door, he also starts finding new language for his own heart. That is when another beautiful shift begins. He no longer says only, "I'm fine," or "it's nothing." He starts finding words for what is actually happening inside him. He says, "I felt dismissed today." He says, "I'm overwhelmed and I didn't know how to say it." He says, "I got quiet because I was hurt, not because I stopped caring." This matters so much because love deepens when both people can bring truth into the room. For many men, that is not easy at first. They may have spent years hiding emotion behind logic, distance, jokes, work, or silence. They may have learned that vulnerability is dangerous, that speaking honestly about fear or sadness makes them weak. But deep love begins to change that. It invites them to become more real, more known. A man who truly loves you starts trading old armor for honest language. He starts naming what he feels instead of making you guess. And that changes the relationship from the inside out. It means you are no longer trying to decode him all the time. It means you are not forced to carry the whole emotional conversation by yourself. He joins you there. He says what is true. And when he does, tension often drops fast. Because unnamed emotions create distance, but named emotions build bridges. Even science shows that when people clearly name what they feel, the emotional storm inside begins to calm. But beyond science, there is something deeply human about. Honest words make love easier to trust. They make the invisible visible. They make the hidden reachable. This is also why his tone begins to matter just as much as his words. You can hear when a man is speaking from pressure, and you can hear when he is speaking from peace. The deeply loving man no longer sounds like he is defending a border every time he opens his mouth. He sounds grounded, warm, awake. His voice slows down because he is present. He pauses because he is listening. He does not rush to fix every problem because he understands that not every wound wants advice. Sometimes it wants witness. Sometimes the most loving thing he can say is not a solution, but a sentence like, "That must have been heavy for you," or "I can see why that hurt," or "You don't have to carry that alone." These lines may sound simple, but their effect is deep. They tell a woman that she does not have to earn tenderness through perfect behavior. They tell her that her feelings can exist without becoming a burden. And in that kind of atmosphere, trust grows quietly but powerfully. Her body softens. Her voice becomes more honest. She stops preparing for battle in every vulnerable conversation. This is what emotional safety does. It changes the speed of love. It changes the quality of truth that can be spoken. It changes how conflict feels. Two people stop fighting to survive the moment and start working to understand it. And once that happens, love becomes less dramatic and far more intimate. That may not look exciting from the outside, but inside the relationship, it feels like peace after a very long war. You also start to notice that a man in deep love becomes more thoughtful in ordinary moments. He says, "This made me think of you." He says, "I know today was a lot, so I wanted to check on you." He says, "I'm proud of how you handled that." These are not huge dramatic lines. That is exactly why they matter. They reveal attention. And attention is one of the purest forms of love. It means he is carrying you in his awareness, even when you are not standing right in front of him. It means his care is no longer reactive. It has become woven into his day. He notices details, the tension in your shoulders, the tiredness in your voice, the smile you give when you are trying to be strong. The little thing you mentioned 3 days ago that most people would have forgotten by morning, he notices and then he responds. Not perfectly, every time, but consistently enough that you begin to feel cherished, not just desired. That is an important difference. Desire can be intense and still be shallow. Cherishing is slower. It sees more. It holds more. It remembers more. And the man who cherishes you does not only speak when he wants something. He speaks to pour something in. Reassurance, gratitude, presence, kindness. You begin to feel that his words are not hooks trying to pull you somewhere. They are steady hands helping you rest where you are. And if you have ever been loved only when you were convenient, then this kind of thoughtful language will feel almost unreal at first. But this is what grounded love sounds like. Simple, consistent, deep. As love grows even more, He starts saying things that come from awe instead of habit. He says, I'm grateful we found each other. He says, I still love hearing how your mind works. He says, being near you calms something in me. These lines matter because they reveal a man who is no longer in love only with what you do for him. He is moved by who you are. He is not just attached, he is aware. And awareness changes the texture of his words. They become less transactional, less self-centered, less about what he can get, more about what he genuinely sees. A man like this does not act like your presence is guaranteed. He treats it like a gift. He does not become lazy with language. He keeps letting you know that you matter, not through endless flattery, but through honest appreciation. This keeps a relationship alive. It protects it from becoming numb. Because people do not only need loyalty, they need to feel valued. They need to feel chosen in real time, not just assumed. When a man deeply loves, his words stop sounding like ownership and start sounding like reverence. He does not say, you're lucky to have me. He says, I'm thankful for you. He does not say, you know I care. He says, I want you to feel that I care. That is a very different energy. One takes love for granted. The other keeps feeding it. And this is where a woman often feels something beautiful happen inside her. She stops shrinking. She stops guarding so tightly. She begins to bloom. Because the love around her feels steady enough to trust. And then there is the quietest sign of all. One many people overlook because it does not sound flashy. Sometimes a deeply loving man says very little. But what he does not do says everything. He does not interrupt your pain with his impatience. He does not vanish when your mood is heavy. He does not mock what is tender. He does not force the moment to move faster than the truth can move. He can sit beside you in silence without making the silence feel empty. And when he finally speaks, it is often with great care. Maybe he says, we don't have to solve this all tonight. Maybe he says, I'm still here. Maybe he says nothing for a while and just stays. That kind of staying is powerful. It tells your nervous system that love does not disappear when words run out. It tells your heart that connection can survive discomfort. So many people only know how to be close when everything is easy to explain. But deep love can also hold what is still unspoken. It can sit on the balcony after an argument. It can breathe in the middle of tension. It can remain when there is no neat ending yet. And that is often where trust is built most. Not in the perfect conversation, but in the one where neither person had all the answers and one of them still chose not to leave. If you understand that, then you understand why this kind of love feels different. It does not perform, it holds. It does not pressure, it steadies. It does not just say beautiful things, it becomes a beautiful place to rest. So when a man deeply loves you, listen closely. Not only to the words, but to the energy beneath them. Listen for, I hear you. Listen for, what do you need right now? Listen for, I want to understand. Listen for, I'm here. Listen for, I was wrong and I want to do better. Listen for, tell me more about what you're feeling. These are not just sweet phrases. They are signs of inner change. Signs that he is learning how to love with steadiness instead of fear, with presence instead of performance, with truth instead of ego. And if he says these things with consistency, with actions that match, with a calmness that makes your spirit exhale, then you are not just hearing romance, you are hearing emotional maturity. You are hearing a man whose love is becoming safe. A man whose heart is no longer trying to conquer, but to connect. A man who does not just want your attention, but wants to protect your peace. And that is rare, very rare. In the end, The deepest love is not always the one that dazzles you in public. It is the one that steadies you in private. The one that knows how to stay gentle when life gets hard. The one that speaks with care when care is needed most. And if this touched something in you, then you already know the truth. Real love is not only felt in passion. It is felt in peace. It is heard in simple words. And once you hear those words from the right heart, everything changes.